recording now. And while I am discussing giving the lecture on puzzles and games, go ahead and open up Unreal till you get to this create new projects block here. So we did create a my projects, and we maybe messed around with it a little bit on Tuesday, but today we're gonna create our first puzzle game. Okay. So just get to this screen. It might take a second, and then if you want, you can jump into the presentation, or you can just watch along. So the idea here is that what is a puzzle? A puzzle is something that's fun and has a single right answer.
Andrew is here.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Andrew. Okay, so it has a single right answer, and so puzzles started 4,000 years ago. It has mazes, and then they developed into these things that you probably did in preschool, where you like get all these different colors, and then you have this thing where like build a horse, and you're like, okay, I take this square, I put it there, I put this triangle here, I put this here, and so on, right? And then it makes a horse. So that was puzzles 4,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, sorry. And then of course we got to like 20 questions, and then Rubik's Cube, and then finally our first puzzle game, Zork. And Zork was a what's called a MUD, multi-user dungeon. No, actually, it wasn't a MUD. I take that back. But the idea is that it was a text-based adventure game. So you would type things in. You'd be like, you type in like door, and it would be like, the door is open now. Respond back to you like, okay, look, like this, and then be like, you see. You're in the living room, and there's a couch that's ripped up, and the lights are kind of low, and you're like, okay, turn on lights. I don't know, right? And and then it'd be like, the lights are on now. You can see da 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 da, and you get killed by the murderer or something like that. That was how the this game was, right? And I'm telling my age now, so man. But 1980. So then game designers sort of like classified, and I don't just mean video game designer, I mean game designers and like board games and all that, right? Sort of classify puzzles into like this sort of groupings, which have like this mathematic puzzles where there's logic and space and all that. So like chess puzzles, Clue, Minesweeper, right? Those are the mathematic type games, or puzzles, sorry. And then you have physics type puzzles where, like Angry Birds, where you have to use the slingshot in a certain way to knock things over. You have like your visual field puzzles where it's like spot the difference, right? And if you're like my age, you had those old magazines, and there was I forget what they're called, Hallmark magazines or something like that. Anyway, they would always be at the dentist office and have two pictures, and you like find the difference between the two. Then of course your language puzzles, like Scrabble and Words with Friends and stuff like that. And then common sense and situation types puzzles. So adventure games, 20 questions, etc., etc. And then computers allowed us to sort of leverage these puzzles classifications into new forms of play, right? So like Tetris is a mixture of like mathematics and actually it's mostly mathematics, right? And space, but you can do, there's like Mario, what is it, the Mario Tetris with the Dr. Mario, right? So it's like you're looking at the other person's screen and trying to figure out how you can mess with them. New experiences, so there's like Braid, Jonathan Blow's Braid, there's Portal, right, made by Valve, and stuff like that, and so on, right? So that's kind of the history of puzzles, but really all video game puzzles revolve around this simple puzzle idea, the most simplest puzzle idea, and that is that a user enters an area, or a player enters an area, there's some sort of trigger volume, and there's some sort of key. And then once both of these things have been answered, then the goal happens. So in the game of Portal, a player enters an area, right? And the key is the Rubik's Cube, right? And then they have to grab the Rubik's Cube, put it on top of the trigger volume, that's this guy right here, right? Here's our key, the Rubik's Cube. They put it on the trigger volume, and then the goal opens and they're allowed to enter. That's okay. But this is the simplest puzzle form, right? However, this is used in every single thing that's done with games. So as an example, we have, but I'm going to skip the boss battle one because it's more complex, but let's say the hidden secrets one, right? So our trigger volume is actually the hole itself. So the player hits this trigger volume, and the key is an event, and that event is that Link's animation changes to this, like falling in the hole animation, and then the screen goes black, and then it goes back to show him like inside a cave. Another type of puzzle is, here our key is the bomb itself, and if he places the bomb inside the trigger volume, then an animation plays, right? An event plays out, animation plays, and then the cave has a hole in it. Here's another example. So the player enters the trigger volume, presses a use key, and when he does, he gets these 4 coins, right? Combat is the same. Each of these AI, they have trigger volumes. The key, of course, is a sword. When the sword touches a trigger volume, an animation plays, an event plays, and the bad guys die. Even the dungeon design itself is trigger volumes. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to go to Photoshop here. What I mean by that is, let me grab this trigger volume. Oftentimes, and at least in Legend of Zelda, the player enters the room, and as soon as he does, he immediately triggers the trigger volume. And what happens normally, oops, go right here. Yeah, it's the trigger volume. And then what happens normally is the keys are bad guys, right? Bad guys spawn in. And then when the player kills those bad guys, then the doors open, right? If the player enters the area again, right, and the bad guys are already dead, what happens? If you've ever played Legend of Zelda, you'll know that immediately the Link hits the trigger volume, the doors close, it calculates the key, oh, all the bad guys are still already dead, and then immediately reopens the door, right? So this is exactly how it's done. We're going to do the same thing in Unreal here shortly. Let me go back to this guy. Let's see what else do we have. Oh, and of course, chickens are definitely are a trigger volume too, right? So if the player messes with the chicken, interacts with it in the wrong way or whatever, the chickens get angry, and and then you die by chicken death. So let's talk about boss battles. If you work for a big studio, like when I worked at Sony, typically your programmers you're segregated into your regular programmers who do like game stuff and controls and camera, and then you do have programmers and designers who just deal with boss battles only. And boss battles typically will have multiple types of triggers and events associated with it, depending on the boss battle. So like in this one, the player enters the area, right? And as soon as he does, I think it starts with like 1 guy, and then he splits off into 5, and then the guy does all sorts of different animations and whatever, right? And then the player has to interact with the trigger volumes of each of these enemies. And then when he does, that enemy goes away, allowing the player to, when they all line up in a row and they go down, straight down and up and down like that, he can get through it, or she can get through it. There's other types of games that do boss battles like that. So like let's say God of War is an example, right? The boss battle of God of War, and I don't have a picture of it, but the idea is that you have to press button sequences in a certain order, right? Like it plays this video, and then it's like press Y really quickly, and you press Y, and like okay, and he slashes him in the ankle or whatever, and then he like jumps up and press up, down, left, A, B, select, whatever. That's a puzzle still, right? That's still a puzzle, even though it's a boss battle. So that's what I mean by boss battles being a puzzle. Okay, so that was really, really rapid. Any questions on how puzzles work? Specifically, a video game puzzle where we have something like this, right? Where we have a key and a trigger volume, and it could be that the key is to put, to be on the trigger volume to open the door. It could be that the key is bad guys. It could be that the key is the player itself. And typically the player has to enter the trigger volume in order to manipulate the goal. And sometimes they don't have the key, sometimes they do. Anyway, any questions?
No, sir.
Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and get into Unreal. And so we'll discuss, this is building our first event. Okay, yeah, cool. All right, so what we want to do is we want to be right here, and I'm going to go a lot slower now. Okay, so if I'm going too slow, let me know. If I'm going too fast, you got to type in or tell me that I'm going too fast. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new project. So right here under New Projects category, we're going to click Games, and then we're going to hit Next. And then we hit Next. We're going to hit First Person for our template. We're going to still work on First Person template because we're making a portal type game. All right, so once you have first person selected, hit next. Make sure you're still on Blueprint. That's what you want it to be right here, Blueprint. And make sure that it's still in your Documents folder and under the Unreal Projects. Right here where it says Select Location, Documents, Unreal Projects. Make sure that's set. And the name of your project is going to be my first puzzle. Oh, it has to be all one word. Sorry, my first puzzle game. Oh, I already have that name. It's fine. My first puzzle. Something like that. All right, once you have that set, just hit Create Project, and it'll take a second to load. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Okay, so hopefully you're in the game or in the editor now. First thing I want you to do under the content browser is I want you to click this guy right here, Show Hide Source Panel. All right, and then you can drag the line if you want. I like to drag it. And then right here where these blueprints are, we're going to change that by going to View Options, Scale, and scaling it down just a little bit. All right, so once that's set, we just hit play, and once that's it out, our game seems to be working. It's this annoying thing wherever I get into the game, this ball fires and it makes a really loud noise. And if I'm testing stuff that has nothing to do with shooting, like making a Portal game, then I'm going to disable that. So let's do that right away. So I'm going to hit Escape to stop playing the game. I'm going to go to first person character in my world outliner in the upper right hand corner, first person character. If you can't find it in the world outliner, you can also type in the world outliner search bar, first person. And when you do, you can see there it is. So we're looking for first person character. And right here, it says edit first person character. So I can click on that. When I do, it opens up the first person character blueprint. Another way to do that, so that's one way to open it. I'm going to close it and I'm going to do a different way. So I can select our first person character in our world outliner, just like I'm doing. And I can click on Edit Blueprint in the Details panel right here. And you can see Open Blueprint Editor when I click on Edit Blueprint. And I click on that. And you can see again, it opens up my first person character blueprint. I'm going to show you one more way to super confuse you. So world outliner, first person character again. And this time I'm going to right click it and I'm going to say edit. Oh wait, actually, where is it at? It's in here somewhere. Oh yeah, edit first person character. Here it is. So right there in the menu, edit first person character. And that brings up the blueprint as well, the blueprint editor for first person character blueprint. All right, so we want this open, this first person character blueprint, and we want the event graph tab opened. So it should look like this. It might actually look like something like this. So we can use mouse wheel to scroll in and out. So let me, it's mouse wheel, scroll in and out. We can use right click and hold to move the event graph around. Right mouse, hold. Okay, and then we can, if you've ever played an RTS game, we can left click and drag to select multiple things. And when an object or a node is selected, it will have a yellow ring around it. Right, so I have this selected, a yellow ring, I have this selected, I have many things selected, and so on and so forth. Once you have an object selected, so let's say I have this guy selected, I can left click and drag to move it around. And there are some other keys I'm going to show you guys how to do here shortly. All right, so what we want to do is we want to stop the firing of the gun. And the reason being is because it makes this noise and we're not really doing any shooting. So you can see I'm already in the right spot right here. It's a spawn projectile. So if you're zoomed out like this, the one you're looking for is this guy spawn projectile. And remember, I'm holding down right mouse to find that comment section. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold down Alt right here where this pressed pin is. I'm going to hold down Alt and I'm going to left click. And when I do, it breaks the noodle that goes between this execution pin and this execution pin. Right, so I'm just hold Alt and it breaks that pin for me. Sorry, Alt and left click. Alt plus left click breaks noodles. All right, so now that we've made some code, you're programmers now. Congratulations. We're going to hit compile right here, and that's right here in our toolbar. And when we hit that, hopefully we get a check, and that's fine. And then we'll hit. You can see right here it has an asterisk on our blueprint. That means that it's not saved. So we're going to hit save as well, and now you can see the asterisk went away. Now, when we go into the game, I'm gonna hit play again. No annoying shooting, and when I left click, it doesn't shoot anymore. Why? Because we broke the execution pin that starts the function for shooting. All right, we can go a little bit further since we're messing with this blueprint. So I'm back in the blueprint again, and now I'm going to go to the viewport tab, this one right here. And what I want to do is I don't want to have this gun. I just want the same way kind of how it was in Portal, where you just had the crosshair. So I don't want the gun, and I don't want this VR gun either. So what I'm going to do is right here in our components section is I'm going to click on this mesh 2P, and I'm going to right click it and say delete. And you can see that it got rid of the mesh, but it kept the gun. So I'm going to right click FP underscore gun, and I'm going to say delete. And then we have the sphere. I'm going to right click that, and I'm going to say delete. And then where it says left motion controller, I'm going to right click that guy, hit delete. And the same for the right motion controller. I'm actually hit delete on the keyboard. So there's a different way to do it. Hit delete on the keyboard. VR gun, we're going to get rid of that too. And VR marker, getting rid of that. So the only thing you should see now is arrow, mesh, and first person character, or first person camera, sorry. And obviously the capsule component and your character movement component. So hit compile again. Oh, we have issues, right? And you can see this is our message log. It says, oh, there's some problem, right? The blueprint is not, and blah, blah, blah. And the target must have a connection. So if we click on this target right here, we click on that, it will take us to our event graph where there's a problem. And what we'll do is we're just going to remove that. We'll see if that works. Hit compile again. And I still have an issue. So I'm gonna hit target again, right here where the problem is, right? That's something, blah, 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 it's a problem. Right here. This is, if it's a headset, blah, 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 I don't care. I'm just gonna get rid of these two errors. See how they have errors on the nodes? I'm just gonna left click and drag and hit the delete key to remove them. We'll hit compile again. And I still have a couple more errors, no problem. So I'm gonna find this target. Here it is, get world location. I don't care about that. I'm gonna delete that guy, compile, and I got one more right here, attach to component. Just gonna get rid of that, compile, and now I don't have any more errors, and that's fine. Normally you wouldn't do that, but because we don't want the gun, we don't need any of the gun information in our blueprint because we're not using the gun, we can just delete it all. All right, so now all it's deleted. I will minimize our blueprint and go back to our main editor, hit play. And now you can see I no longer have a gun. I could still move around and I have this crosshair. This is exactly what I want. Because eventually we're gonna pick up these white boxes and move them to our trigger volume. Okay. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna close our first person character blueprint. And what we'll do is we will make a trigger volume that that activates when the turns on a light when the player enters the area and turns the light off when a player leaves, right? So think about like horror games or any like FPS game where you have to turn on the lights. In our case, we're just gonna walk into the area and turn the light on. What we're gonna do is we're gonna look at our first person character, and you see this, the red arrow here, this is the direction that the character's facing. And actually you can see there's like a blue arrow that's also letting us know this is the direction the character's facing. And we wanna make sure that when we build our trigger volume that it's going to be in front of our character, right? You don't wanna like have to deal with turning around and all that sort of stuff. So to build our first trigger volume that turns off and on, we're gonna go to our content browser. In our content browser, we're going to click on the word content right here, and then we're going to right click. And when I do, I get this context menu. In the context menu, I'm going to click on new folder. And this new folder, we're going to call it core. And this is just where like our blueprints are going to go. All right. So now I'm inside the core folder, and you can tell because I've clicked on it, it has a yellow highlight here. And also because you can see right here that I'm my main folder content arrow core. So I'm definitely in the core folder, right? You can see how it changes when I select a different folder. Inside the core folder, I'm gonna right click right here where it says right click to create content. And I'm gonna say blueprint class in our context menu. When I do, it's going to ask me what parent class do I want to do. And remember, I told you that all things in Unreal are actors, but some actors behave differently than others, right? We will get into some of the other ones, maybe, but mostly what we want to deal with is just actors. So we're going to click on actor. And when we do, it's going to ask us to rename the blueprint. So it should look like this. If it doesn't, you can hit F2 to rename it. You can see I'm renaming it now. That's F2, by the way. Or you can right click and say rename right here. And you can see here's the shortcut key, F2 to rename. And what we're going to do is we're going to type BP underscore. We'll do toggle light on enter. So BP underscore toggle light on enter. And you'll notice that I did not give any spaces to our naming, and every single first letter of every single word is capitalized. And that's exactly how you want to do it. All right, so if you got this far, give me a thumbs up, or if you're not there, let me know so that we can give you a minute or two to slow down. Awesome. All right.
Where I'm at is I had a problem with deleting the gun. Can you walk me through that again? Sorry.
Sure, that's okay. So I don't have the gun anymore, but what you'll want to do is only have the capsule component, the arrow, the character mesh 0, and first person camera. Only those things in your components. And then when you do that, you hit compile, it will give you compiler errors saying, hey, I'm missing some things in the first person blueprint. And then you just go and you delete those things, whatever they are. So as an example, oh, no, we want to do set component. There we go. So you can see it's giving me an error like this.
Okay.
You just click on target right here. And when you do, it'll take you to that node, that particular node. And that node will also have the word error on it. And for now, I just want you to remove it by hitting the delete key. Make sure you have that particular node selected and then hit the delete key. Got it? I'm going to move on because there's other students who,
All right, go ahead.
and you can watch the video later. All right, cool. So, all right, so we're back here at BP toggle light on enter. We're going to go ahead and double click that, and it's going to open up our toggle light on enter blueprint. You should be at the viewport, and in the viewport, we have this sphere. Now, I personally don't like a bunch of spheres in my scene. And when you have hundreds and hundreds of blueprints, that's exactly what it looks like, hundreds and hundreds of different spheres. So I don't like that. So we're going to fix that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our components, add component. In the search box for our add components, we're going to type in scene. And the one we're looking for is this utility called scene. We're going to click on that guy. And then it's going to allow us to rename it. And we're going to rename it to root. And so it should look something like this. We have default scene root, and then a child of that is just the word root. And that child that's named root is a scene component. Then what we're going to do is we're going to left click, hold our left click and hold, and then drag it onto our scene root. And you'll see that when I do, I get this context menu that says, hey, would you like to drop it to make it a new root? And it has a little checkbox. You see that? And yes, I do want to make it a new root. And so then the default scene root goes away, and also the sphere goes away in our viewport, which is perfect. And now we have a blank root on origin. Perfect. So we'll hit compile and save. All right, so we go back to here. What we're going to build is our trigger volume, this guy. And when the player enters the trigger volume, he doesn't need a key or anything like that. When he enters this trigger volume, we're going to turn on a light. So I'm going to create a new layer here, and we're just going to call this light. Now the light doesn't have, it can be anywhere, but in our case, we're just going to put it on top of the trigger volume. All right. So that's what we're going to do. So the light just basically, when the player enters the trigger volume, the light comes on. when the player leaves the trigger volume, the light turns off. All right, so what we need is a collision component. Oh, sorry, no, it's a box collision, this one right here. So in the components, we're gonna go click add component. In the search box, we're gonna type in the word box. And when we do, you can see right here, the box collision, that's what we want. And we can leave it named box, that's fine. The next thing I want is a visual representation. So if we look at the Portal game, their visual representation is like this platform, and then on top of the platform is this, I don't know what this is, but basically it's something to let the player know, hey, this is where you put the cube, right? Like a big red button, basically, right? So we're gonna do something similar. So we're gonna go to add components and we're gonna type in cube. And there you can see right there, it's a cube. And we're just gonna rename this cube to platform. And in my case, under my components, I have root as the parent, then I have box as a child, and then platform as a child of box. And that is not how I want it. I want platform to be a child of root. So basically root has two children, not just one, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna left click and drag platform onto root. And when I do, you can see that I get these, the context menu says drop here to see available actions. So I'm gonna let go. And when I do, it says attach or make new root. And what I wanna do is attach it. And so now you can see that root has two children now, box and platform. All right. All right, so what do we have? We have our platform, we have our box, we have our parent. So we need a light though, right? We need a light to turn off and on. So we're gonna do add component, and we're gonna do light. And we have all these different lights, but the one we're looking for is point light. This guy right here, point light. So click on that. And we can just leave it named point light. That's fine by me. And we also want it to be a child of root. So if your point light looks like this, where it is a child of platform, or maybe if it looks like this, where it's a child of box, you're gonna need to fix it. Make sure that it's a child of root, right? So it should look like that. You have box, platform, and point light, all a child of root. We'll hit compile and save. All right, so we're gonna make some adjustments in our viewport. So remember to move around, it's WASD to move around. And you can see that my camera, hold down right mouse and then WASD to move around. Hold down right mouse to move and WASD to move around. You can see my screen is way too fast, so I'm gonna slow down the camera just a bit to about 2, that's fine by me. Remember, we can also hold down Alt and left click and drag once we have a object focused. And remember to focus, you hit F. So you select an object and then you hit F and then you can focus it. This grid is going to be a representation of our ground, okay? So what I want to do is I want to make the platform just a little bit into the ground, and but I also want it sticking up. So I want the player to be able to walk on top of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select platform in our components. Then I'm going to hit R for scaling. You can also click R up here, or I'm sorry, scale up here in the top. And I'm going to scale on the Z axis, or the Z axis is what I like to call it. I played too many zombie games, if you guys didn't know. And you can see here I'm scaling it, and it's snapping at 10 degrees or whatever it is, or sorry, actually it's 0.25. So I'm going to lower that scaling down just a bit to like this 0.0625, so I can make it just a little bit smaller. Something like that. That looks good to me. And also, the trigger volume needs to be pretty much the same size as the platform. So I'm going to bring in the platform to be nearly the same size as our trigger volume. It's pretty close. That's good enough. And then I'm going to hit compile and save. Now we can test to see if this is a good enough size for the player to step onto. So what we can do is I'm going to minimize our toggle light on enter blueprint. And I'm going to go back to our main editor. And I'm going to left click in our content browser. I'm going to left click and drag the toggle light on enter into our scene in front of our player. And then I'm going to hit play. And as you can see, it is pretty small, right? So we could probably increase that a little bit. So go back to our toggle light blueprint. And I'll actually make this bigger this way and bigger this way. And if you want to see something really cool, I am going to show you that as I move it in the blueprint, because it is already in the world, you can see how I'm making it much bigger. So now if I hit play, you can see that looks big enough. The player definitely could step on that, right? So make yours big enough that the player can step on it. And then we will modify the box collision so that it's also the same size. All right, so we're going to click on the box and then we're going to scale that. And I'm just dragging it on the X and the Y axis so that it's about the same size as my as my platform. And then on the Z axis, I'm going to make it pretty big, something like that. And actually, I can bring that up too if I want. That looks good. We'll compile and save. And I can look at it in the game. And that looks fine to me. You can see this capsule is the size of the player, so it's a little bit bigger than the player, and that's okay with me. All right, we'll go back to our blueprint. And now we're going to move the light. So we have the point light selected now, and I'm using the transform, so that's W, the W key. And I'm just going to move it up. And then you can see this big, actually we'll change the camera again back to like 4, I guess. You can see this big sphere with the lines here. This is where the light is going to shine, right? It's how much light is projected. And we can adjust the intensity of the light inside that area. We can also, and by the way, I'm doing this through the details panel. So I have the light selected, details panel, and I'm adjusting the intensity under the light category. I can adjust the color. So maybe I have like a nice hot pink. I can also adjust the attenuation radius, and that is this scale of the blue. So you can see how it shrinks and goes down. And let's say that you do some crazy number and you don't like it. You want to go back to default. Well, you can click on this little yellow right here, this little yellow arrow. When you do it, resets it back to default. So for now, we'll just mess with those 3. Set up your intensity, how you desire, whatever color, and then your attenuation radius. And we'll hit compile and save. And then when we go into the game, you can see the light is on, so it's not exactly how we want it, but we will be able to fix it here in just a second. We've got to add some logic. All right, so if you're at this step, you got all this done, give me a thumbs up and we'll continue moving. Awesome. All right, cool. So now we need to do some logic. So what we're going to do is we're going to go, oh, we need to do one more thing. Sorry. Click on your point light, go to the details panel, scroll down to the rendering category, and uncheck the word visible. Make sure it is not checked. So we don't want the light to be visible until the player steps onto the platform. Then we turn the light on. So make sure it's unchecked. And then we'll hit compile and save. All right, once that's done, we can go to the event graph and we can start adding code basically. So I don't think we need any of these. So we'll just, so I'm left click and dragging in the blueprint and selecting all these nodes, and I'm just hitting the delete key to get rid of them. And I'll hit compile and save. Then I want to click on the box for the box collision. And with that selected in my components, with that selected, I'm going to go down to the details panel. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the details panel to the events category, this one right here. In the events category, it should be hopefully to tomorrow or the next day. It takes a while for it to process HD. It's a good question. In the events category, we have this on component begin overlap and on component end overlap. So we'll do is we'll click both of those. So I'm going to click on my box again and on end. All right. So what this means is on component begin, the on component is a player, right? The player. So when the player overlaps the collision or our box, then we're going to do something, whatever that is. Okay. And in our case, we're going to turn on the light. Could you repeat what we're supposed to do before going into the box events? You talking about the point light, turning the light off? So, okay, no problem. So you're going to click on point light. You're going to go to the details panel of point light. You're going to scroll down to the rendering category. This one right here, rendering. And then where it says visible, you're going to uncheck it. So the light is not turned on or not visible initially until the player overlaps this box. All right, so on component begin overlap, by the way, that's going to box, details, scrolling all the way to the bottom to the events category. And the two that you want is on component begin overlap and on component end overlap, those two guys. All right, so next we're going to grab our point light. So I'm going to left click and drag and bring it into the blueprint event graph. And now I have this cylinder, and it has a pin, a blue pin, and it's just saying that's a component object reference. I'm going to drag out from the blue pin, drag on a noodle, and when I let go of left mouse, then I get this context menu. In the context menu, we want to add that render visibility. So I'm just going to type in the word visibility in the search bar. And you can see right here, we have two options. And you can see, look, rendering category. It's the exact same thing that we just did a second ago, right? Rendering category, set visibility. So this one right here, I'm gonna click on that guy. And this node is saying, do you want it to be visible or do you want it to be invisible? So right now it's invisible. Why? Because it's not checked. If I check it, then it's visible. Just like in our details panel, rendering category, visible. We're doing the same thing in this node. So when the player does overlap it, right, begin overlap, then we're going to say yes to that. And then I'm going to connect this execution pin, this guy right here, to this execution input to this node, just like that. And I did that by left click and dragging. So hit compile and save. And then we will minimize our light, toggle light on enter blueprint, go back to our main level editor. We'll hit play to go into the game. And then when the player steps onto this platform, the light should, quote unquote, should turn on. Hey, it works. It's amazing. Of course, when the player leaves, the light does not turn off. So we need to fix that too, right? So we'll go back to our toggle light on enter blueprint. What I'm going to do is I'm going to left click and drag on both the point light and the set visibility node, both of these guys. I'm going to hold down Control and hit C for copying. Control plus C for copy. Right? And then I'm going to hit Control and V as in Victor for pasting. Control plus V, paste. Right? And hopefully you can see where this is going. I'm just going to drag this guy like this. I'm going to uncheck visibility because I want it to be off when the player ends overlapping with the collision box, when it stops overlapping with this box. So I'm going to connect the execution pin with a noodle just like that. And so now when the player leaves the box, the light is no longer visible. And when the player enters the box, the light is visible. So we'll compile and save. Minimize this again. We'll check it out and see if it works. So we're back in the main editor. We'll hit play. Player enters, light turns on. Player exits, the light turns off. So the same concept is used in all games, and we're going to use the same idea, the begin overlap and end overlap, these two guys, on component begin overlap, these two guys. We're going to use these to open a door when a portal object, portal cube is grabbed. So I haven't messed with this in a while, so hopefully I get this right. Let's see. Yeah, there it is. Drag it. And then the door opens, right? That was pretty quick. But let me do it one more time. And I will do it. So there's the door over there. We're going to grab this portal cube. We're going to place it onto the platform. And then the door opens. It's amazing. Okay, but that is next week's problem. We're not there yet. I gave you guys a lot of information and we messed with our first blueprint, which is super awesome. And when we come back on Tuesday, we will start to build out that system to make a portal type game. All right, any questions? Any questions on what we did, how we did it? Go ahead and save everything. So if you haven't already, you can go to File on your main editor, File, Save All right here. And then you are good to go. I will see you guys on Tuesday, and we will continue the discussion on how to build a portal game in Unreal.
Have a good day.
Good
Awesome.
weekend.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Have a good weekend, sir.